I was always a person that, first of all, very, very blessed and always been very grateful. I'm grateful for my relationships and my family and and then I had a great career, great kids, everything kind of, and I thought I recognized that a lot of things went my way, and I worked hard and I don't think anything was handed to me, but I recognized that, a lot of things broke my way and health, happiness, all of those things. And I had kind of planned or architected sort of my path to a certain degree, you know? And because family is so important to me and memories and gatherings, it's really the most precious thing in the world to me. And as you say, that radically changed, right? That radically changed over COVID to where, my marriage fell apart and where I thought I would be, just all of a sudden for the first time in my life was like where I thought I would be was very different than reality.
This is Robin. She's my neighbor here in South Beach, Miami. We've become friends over the last year under some very unusual circumstances for her. I first met her because she was, and she totally hates it when I say this, my landlord. It was her apartment that she bought when she was a young professional that I rented sight unseen in June 2020 at the peak of the pandemic. And just before I arrived to South Beach, just before the pandemic, Robin stepped down from an illustrious role in the cruise industry. She was doing some consulting when I first met her, when her marriage started to unravel, which was probably the hardest thing she'd ever have to deal with in her life. Her episode is about how relationships change and where we draw limits and boundaries. It's about what one can do in the middle of a shitstorm when it becomes clear that the future you envisioned isn't a reality anymore. This episode is brought to you by Breezeway, a property care and operations platform, and B&B Finder, the property listing marketplace built for professional property managers. B&B without the fees.
I would say, that moment in my life that I came through tested that for sure. And and if I'm going to be honest, it never had been tested to that degree before. So you can feel strong, you can think you're strong until you really have some shit to deal with. And I appreciated that I never really had been tested. Thank God. Never really had a real big life challenge that I had to deal with. And I always told myself that I was very grateful and appreciative that, people all around us, are dealt some really tough cards. And I finally felt like, oh, okay, this is my time to deal with some shit. My family unit was just completely, my core nuclear, family was just completely, over as I knew it or how I anticipated it would be. So there wasn't really a choice. I really couldn't go back. And I didn't want to go back. I really had to look at where I was. And I don't think maybe, you go through a time where you have to, process everything and decide, let things settle down and say, you know, what does the next step look like? There's that. And then there's also some harsh realities about financial realities, kids going to college, mortgage payments, things that you had relied on that are going to be different. And so part of it is, you kind of kick into a survival mode maybe at the beginning and say, these are things that I need to do to make sure that there is stability. And number one for me is always for my kids. So in an unstable kind of situation, I just wanted, so maybe if that's a little bit of a way of going back, I would say I would more kind of describe it as they've always been my number one priority. And I didn't, no matter that my whole world was kind of changed around me, I wanted to preserve that stability as much as I could for them, you know? And maybe a little bit because I thought about it later that I had been through a similar situation when I was growing up and when I was in high school of when my parents separated. I don't know if we ever talked about that before. My parents just celebrated their 60th wedding anniversary, so they did get back together, but there was a real, rocky time at the same ages of my kids. It it happened for a period of time. And I remember, what a distraction that was in my own life. My parents tried really hard to, I was safe and secure and all of that. Emotionally, it was really painful. And preparing to go away to college, it just kind of changed my whole focus. And maybe for me, even subconsciously, I really didn't want that to happen to my kids.
So I mentioned Robin had been doing some consulting, but she was also a full time mom, and her two daughters basically grew up in the townhouse that I now call home. They were another layer of responsibility that Robin had to deal with. And at times during this period, I just could not believe the grace with which Robin balanced all of these different needs.
I felt really sad for, as I've kind of, told you how important family is to me. No one in my family is divorced, and how important, connections and family and tradition and milestones and all of those things are. Sometimes I've wondered, I'm like, why is that so incredibly important to me? So to lose that for my own kids, for my own family, yeah, that was really, 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 really sad. Um, and scary in terms of everything, I knew I wanted my kids to have their stability with their school and their friends and the house that we had just renovated. And, yeah, I was afraid that they were gonna lose that, that we would have to sell their home, that they were gonna have to, in the midst of all this, they were gonna have to move. Yeah, I definitely had a lot of sleepless nights over that for sure. Yeah, it was definitely my biggest personal challenge that I've ever encountered. 100%. 100%.
What would you like the girls to take away from that?
Well, first of all, I'm grateful that they're not little kids. They're young adults. So there's probably a part of me that was a little too idealistic, partially because my good fortune of having, like, great friends, great family, health, job, all of those things. And maybe a little too idealistic. And maybe when things were wrong, trying to make them right, or trying really, really hard to make certain things be a certain way, or I wouldn't say covering, glossing over things that were not okay. So I would say my takeaways for my girls is like twofold. I want them to have a little bit more of a clear view of life. A little dose of reality is not such a bad thing. I want them to go through life, open eyed. I want them to clear eyed. I want them to be confident in themselves. I want them to stand up for themselves and what they deserve. I want them to have boundaries. That's hard for a lot of people, but I think it's especially hard for young women. And through all of this, I felt that I had to show them that, I couldn't be fake and be like, oh, mommy's okay. Mommy's okay. That's not good. That's not helping anybody. And I wanted to be measured with how I talked about what's going on. But beyond all, I wanted to be honest with them. You know, I feel like honesty and communication, and, I would say having your close personal circle is really important. And, having your eyes open and kind of having a certain protection mechanism with certain boundaries. I hope that they take that away for themselves. I hope they're really strong young women. I hope they're really confident in themselves and standing up for themselves and what they deserve and what their boundaries are. Um, I still think there's work to do. There's still work to do for myself in that area. As strong as a person as I am, or that most people probably think that I am, you know, still making sure that you advocate for yourself and what you deserve and what's okay and what's not okay in all aspects of your life. That's really, really important. And, the people in my life and the friends that I have that have done work on themselves and, particularly women, that's always kind of a hard one for me. That is always kind of a hard one. I obviously still have some more work to do in that department. But I think if you're a nurturer or a giver, sometimes drawing those boundaries or for yourself, like that can be hard, especially when you're a mom and you know you tend to, not just women, not just moms, but if you're a giver or a people pleaser, you have to be careful about that. And I'm definitely not all the way there. Um, and I have to probably explore you know, why that is sometimes difficult for me. Um, so
Do you mean putting the motherhood, the mother cap aside for a moment and thinking about yourself? Or
yeah, that definitely, or just other people, um, in relationships or in families or in, yeah, that it's kind of a natural fallback sometimes. And I want my girls, I think it's good to be a giver. It's good to, all of those things are wonderful, but you have to understand what the boundaries are. And I say that I want confidence and self-confidence for my daughters and for young women. I think it's like, as a parent, it's one of the hardest things to instill. Well, you can't really instill that in someone, right? You have to help them nurture it and build it up. And in some ways, maybe more, it's interesting, probably, maybe sometimes I wonder when I look back, maybe had more blind confidence or in myself when I was younger. And I still have to have those talks with myself now. As you get older and you have life is more complicated, but that self-confidence is important. It's going to really guide you through, and it's going to help you stake out those boundaries, and it's going to help, pick yourself up, and it's going to help propel you forward. So, building up that confidence within yourself is like a fundamental core thing to get you through. You have to believe in yourself.
this episode is brought to you by Breezeway, a property care and operations platform. Have you ever had a guest walk into an unprepared property, or had them complain about a hair in the shower or a dirty dishwasher or not enough garbage bags? These hiccups can lead to bad reviews, which tarnish your brand reputation. Without the right processes in place to manage your work at your properties, running your rental business can feel incredibly overwhelming. And if you ever feel stuck with too much manual work, Breezeway can help get you unstuck. Yes, Breezeway's property care and operations platform helps coordinate, communicate, and verify the detailed work and deliver it to your guests. You can work with your cleaning team, your maintenance team, your inspections teams, all in one dashboard. They even have a mobile app where your team can complete customized checklists and upload photos to make sure the work aligns with your standards. With Breezeway, you set your business up for success by implementing processes that help you maintain consistency and quality so you can generate more 5-star reviews and never feel stuck again. Breezeway clients have said that Breezeway helped save their marriage, which is a pretty great guarantee. With the amount of time saved and peace of mind that nothing falls through the cracks, you should not wait any longer. Go to breezeway.io/BRMB and sign up for a Breezeway demo today. You can also stop by to visit Breezeway at any of their booths at conferences this season. Mention that you heard them on this podcast, The Unlocked Intermission, and have your implementation fee, estimated at $1,000, waived if you ultimately decide to join. That's breezeway.io/VRMB. And B&B Finder, which is the property listing marketplace built for professional property managers. B&B Finder is free for professional property managers to list on. You can then upgrade your listing to improve visibility. They believe travelers should book directly with property managers, so you own that relationship with the customer. They're held to your terms and your cancellation policy. You also make more money, because B&B Finder does not charge the traveler a service fee, nor do they charge property managers a transaction fee. Their goal is to empower professional property managers and to make travel more enjoyable and less expensive for everybody. B&B Finder only works with professional property managers, so they don't work with for rent by owner situations. Now, they're offering a special for listeners of this podcast. They're offering a free upgrade for a period of 6 months if you simply mention the phrase B&B without the fees to any B&B Finder representative or booth at conference season this year. You'll get 6 months of a free upgraded offer. You can also head over to their website, bnbfinder.com/list, and as a reward, your listing will be upgraded from free to bronze or bronze to silver or silver to gold. That upgrade will be live for 6 months. So this is a pretty wonderful opportunity to try out a company whose values are in line with yours. That's bnbfinder.com/list. This period also had Robin starting to think about her relationships and the people she surrounds herself with in more meaningful ways. Our friendship took an interesting turn when she brought up the possibility of selling me the townhouse that I had at this point totally fallen in love with. This was the property that she raised her daughters in, and it held such an important place in her heart, so it wasn't easy to talk about letting it go.
You know, my parents are in their 80s, and I have teenage daughters that are going to get ready to go away to college. So you're really counting the moments together that you have all together, doing happy things. And I've always been like that about moments, about documenting moments, about life celebrations, bat mitzvahs, as you know that. Passover, we did such a nice Passover Seder together. Like I don't know why I guess growing up, my mom always made a big deal about family moments coming together. And I'm big on photos and capturing and reliving and looking back. And maybe as you get older, you just appreciate that, they don't go on forever.
And it's sometimes like cheesy to be the one, we must get a photo, we must get a photo.
Oh, that's always me.
But looking back, it's the way we remember the thing.
That's what I always say. That everyone's always like, "Ugh, there she goes again, group photo." But then later, everyone says, "Oh, can send me that, text me that, share that with me." And it's just, I do think it helps you relive and recollect really special moments. And we've talked about this before, that when you think about like my kids, that it's so weird that they can look back through their whole life and things that they don't remember, or I can play recordings for them of when they were a little kid on the beach or their first words. And we don't have all that. And I do think it gives an interesting perspective, and it also just for me, I love looking at old pictures, ever having pictures around, or a family cruise for, my brother's 50th birthday, or a great vacation. They're precious because they just remind you of those really special moments in life. So I think you have to, when that situation comes up, you need that's when you call upon those relationships, because they help you get through when you're just kind of like, you can't really see exactly what the next step should be, and you have those people that are there for you and help support you, and they're there for you to talk to. So that's kind of a period, I would say, right away, that help you. But there is a moment where you have to kick in yourself, and you have to be your own best friend, because as much as those people are there for you, and as much as they are there for you, everyone has their own life too, and they have their own challenges too, and their own good and bad going on, and you need to be your own biggest supporter. You need to dig deep and find out what are those things that make you strong, and think about what are those things that give you strength, that give you clarity, and you have to kind of kick those in, because you have those moments where you have to give yourself your own pep talks, where you have to rely on yourself, where you have to build up your own confidence that you can get through this, that you can change course, that you can switch courses in your career, do what you need to do, do what you need to do to get through, and to make sure that your kids are stable and that you're stable, um and that you can continue on in a new direction. And sometimes you might not know exactly what the right direction is, but I think in those moments you have to move forward, and it's okay to not know 100%. You have to move forward and kind of catch your breath, and then stop and do another assessment.
That one really resonates with me, and I think a lot of people, because we originally have this linear idea, like I grow like this, and when suddenly you're asked to grow like this in a completely separate direction, the instinct is it feels like I'm completely going backwards. I'm tumbling out of control. I'm not going in the right direction. I don't know what is the right direction, and therefore I'm not going there. That was a very new kind of disorientation for me. And for me, at least, coming to grips with the fact that's the whole point, that it's not linear and it's not predictable. That's what new growth kind of feels like. Did you have that kind of reminder in your ear the whole time? Is that a way that you think? Does that sound familiar to you?
Definitely, I can relate to that. And um calling upon your inner strength, and giving and just being okay that the one thing you can't do is wallow or stay still and get stuck. But I do think positive momentum, and moving, and that's really important, and that's really helpful, and I think that can be comforting when you feel a little lost, or you don't know what the next step is, that um you move forward and you make progress, and um that's all helpful. For me, it's also about making going back to some of the things that you love, making sure that the things that make sure you kind of sit and meditate about what works for you or gives you strength. And for me, um I'm sure not everyone is built this way, but physical strength is definitely something that gives me a source of also emotional strength. When I feel physically strong, or I feel in control because I just decided to go out for, a run on the beach, and I did it and I accomplished it and I came back and then I'm ready to go to work, or you carry that accomplishment, that strength with you for the rest of the day. So sometimes it's just racking up little wins. And I think that that can be a good tactic. You can overwhelm yourself by thinking, I don't have the big picture figured out. So going back sometimes to the little things and the moments with your kids and the happy moments and the wins and when you feel good, I think that's really, really important. And it doesn't mean that you still don't have maybe the overall disorientation about the bigger direction, but I really rely on those kind of tactics, whenever I'm feeling like that.
And there's something that's a little bit challenging, actually, often a lot challenging, about lying in your bed or sitting in your comfortable chair and either wallowing or reflecting. Maybe you're having a good day, maybe you're having a bad day, and just sitting there and not prompting yourself to go out into the world. When you get stuck, you have to try new things and figure out what works for you. We've established there's going to be unknowns, there's going to be uncertainties, there's going to be things that are scary, unpredictable. Let's talk about one of the best things that you can do for yourself: traveling and exploring new places outside of your comfort zone, outside of your home.
I guess it's on a larger scale of what we were talking about not being isolated, not just staying in one place. Um, Travel is the ultimate way of learning and expanding and being interested in the world and people and culture. And that was such a great thing about working within the travel profession. I have been to some great places, and part of the reason they were so great is because they were new or different, or um, going to certain places that I never otherwise would have been. Vietnam, Guam, Beijing. A lot of it was just that, wow, people are different, the culture is different, people see the world differently than I do, and you just come back with those experiences. You They enhance who you are, how you think. They make you excited. Um, so it's on a much larger scale of, you know, being invited to a dinner party and engaging with someone that you otherwise never would have spoken to, and they turn you on to some great idea or podcast or book or, something really interesting. I mean, lifelong learning, lifelong traveling. It's, and I love that I've been able to do that with my children, having those experiences. I think that it just makes you grow.
I wanted to thank Robin for her courage in coming on to share this story. I think when we're navigating scary new stuff, it's often extremely difficult to explain to others, much less to use the wrong words and then have that recorded and immortalized on some guy's podcast. However, describing that process and exactly what it felt like, that's a skill that I think both Robin and I are working on, respectively. And being able to have those conversations with family or friends, that's, I think, a first step to better understanding it. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, a new way of thinking about our growth, and are attending any vacation rental conferences coming up this season, I know our sponsors would love to meet you. So much that they've arranged a special offer for anybody who stops by their booths. Yes, if you stop by the Breezeway booth or the B&B Finder booth, or if you speak with any of those representatives this coming conference season, let them know you heard this podcast, and the special offer is yours.